Welcome back to the week of slightly less big boys, the Combining. And today I have an even slightly lesser big boy. I didn't plan this. I did not plan for the last video to be about a knockoff of something small made big, and this time a knockoff of something big made small. It's knockoff half-scale Combiner Wars Devastator, by who cares what company. Boy, I'm getting into this one faster than last time, huh? I picked this setup last year, just as my shelves were starting to overflow. I was trolling eBay for figures, like you do, and I initially saw this and thought it was dumb. I mean, CW Devastator isn't exactly the most highly regarded figure, and this is an underscale knockoff from a no-name company. It has to be garbage, right? But then I thought about it, and I'm still looking for an even decent Devastator all this time later after the Toy World one turned out to suck worse than a bullet wound to the face. The Combiner Wars one couldn't be as bad as that one. It's not possible. And I'm out of space, so it'd actually be kind of nice to have something small that isn't going to demand too much room for my shelving. But by the time it arrived, I was already so out of room I still had to put it on the floor for a whole year. Plus, I really wanted to do a week of Devastators that never ended up materializing. It just kept getting pushed back and back and back by other things till I completely forgot about it. So I picked it up for that, and to gain some idea for what this set was like, and so I could get in on the conversation about it. And it didn't hurt that it was 40 bucks. But yeah, as sacrilegious as this is to say, this styles on the Toy World best combiner ever. I mean, it is the best at being a piece of trash I've ever run into, so maybe they earned that title. Starting off this time showing off all the individual robot modes, because this time I'm dealing with a set that's actually not hell to transform. And look at these half-size boys, who still wind up larger than most modern deluxes. This almost feels like the scale they were always meant to have. I know one of the things that often got complained about with this set is the sculpted detail on these guys was really low. And based on what I'm seeing here, yeah, I totally get it. These guys are pretty light on the sculpting, and they would look extraordinarily plain if they were blown up to twice this size. But at this scale, the amount here is just right. It doesn't get over busy or so fine you can't see it, it's just the correct quantity for smaller figures. And they have a solid amount of paint helping what detail is there stand out. Honestly, these guys all look pretty good, though the proportions on them can be a bit wonky. And there are a few issues like Scrapper having no elbows, Long Haul being massive compared to the rest of the team, and most egregiously of all, Mixmaster just having flat out the wrong alt mode. Man, I finally get to join the chorus of people who legitimately don't understand this decision. Yes, it's a real type of cement mixer, and it's the wrong type, and it's an incredibly stupid and fucking ugly type. And while messing with this figure to write this script, Mixmaster's arm snapped off, so yay, yet another Devastator who breaks. Good news is that in his alt mode and limb mode, the arm can still peg on just fine, though the alt mode is his worst one. On the positive side, the size of these once again helps Scrapper and Long Haul. Long Haul seems much less out of place when everyone is smaller, though if you are looking for show accuracy, look elsewhere. And Scrapper's elbows come across a lot more excusable at this scale, as do Mixmaster's and Hook's. Plus, I have to give big props to the head sculpts. These are absolutely far and away the most accurate, best-looking head sculpts of any Constructicon set I've ever handled, with maybe only the Magic Square beating them from the images I've seen, though Scrapper's head here loves to fall into his torso. So yeah, I'm actually pretty pleased with all these little robot modes. And I'm pretty pleased with these transformations as well. While a lot of the KO joints are overly tight, a little creaky, and a lot worrisome with how thin the plastic is, the transformations are simple and fun. Unlike other sets that make you want to rip your hair out, going through the process of doing each of these I find to be a relatively nice and breezy time. Seriously, did Hasbro design a Legends Devastator and just blow it up to pretend it was a Titan? Anyways, the alt modes all look great. We've already complained about the Mixmaster's stupid cement truck mode, so I can just say that the rest of them are fine, with Long Haul also being the wrong kind of dump truck, but that really just comes down to scale. He's supposed to be one of the fairly normal-sized ones in the show, but you can see by this ladder that this is meant to be one of those Titanic ones that you could probably build a small town on the back of. How is that not in a Fallout game or Mad Max movie? These guys are a bit kibble-heavy in some places, but once again, at this size and price, it really doesn't feel like an issue at all. And then even combining them is way better than on the Toy World. There is way less parts forming than on the TW, and yet, it's also a lot easier to do. The Toy World has you go through all these bullshit steps where you have to half untransform the figures to flip out tiny connectors on insanely tight hinges that hurt your fingers and then plug them into unsecured ports that would rather move out of the way than work every time. God, I hate Hook's part in his process. But here, everything is pretty easy to reach and flip out, and nothing is trying to fight you to not work. The parts forming is just the hands and the chest crest, which is much more forgivable than it being like 70% of the entire arms, the whole crotch down to the knees, and the figure's whole head. Plus, also the chest crest. And they are so much easier to attach than on the Toy World. With the constructor, getting the arms and waist attached is a production. You have to do it at the right time, you have to untransform parts of the figure, you have to risk breaking all of the fragile comboners. Here, it's just flip out peg and pop on. And the end result is really solid, but far from perfect. First up, yes, this probably would fit just fine in my regular lightbox, as it's pretty much just Commander class scale. Or I guess, Skyfire scale, as no other figures in the class ever wound up shaped like this or this size. But the week of big boys gets the big box. Anyways, this thing does have its share of problems. For starters, the head is much too small. Devastator's noggin should be like twice this size, and I don't blame them for this, as storing the head in Hook would have required them to get very creative at a larger scale. But I would have liked to have seen them get creative. Secondly, his thighs are a joke. This looks terrible. His legs are like 95% shin. Fortunately, once we get past that, this is easily the third or fourth most solid entry on the looking like Devastator scale of any of the contenders. I say maybe fourth because there is something to be said about the New Age Devastator. As weird as it may look, it's kind of on model for the show at times. Otherwise, this sits just behind the Magic Square one, which I hear has its own problems, but it does look fantastic at least. And that one is just duking it out for the #1 most accurate Devastator spot. Unfortunately, it's duking it out against that sack of shit, the Toy World. Man, why do you have to look so good? It would have been so easy to not be duped into picking up that turd if it didn't look so pretty. But yeah, most other third-party Devastators don't look as accurate as this does. I mean, it's kind of horizontally narrow, and a lot of them comes across too thin. Like, get his arms out from the sides, and he starts to look real weird. But otherwise, this is pretty accurate. And now, all the surface details have really come to bear. While all the individual bots may have seemed like they were a bit slick-sided, Devastator has more mechanical detail than would seem possible by just combining the 6 other figures. A strange way to make him a gestalt for sure. The head, while small, is very good, looking pretty much just as it should with Devastator's odd face poking out of its strange geometric shape. He looks thoroughly nonplussed, which is a fair sight more unique than most head sculpts in the Transformers, as they are usually trying to look neutral. He looks like a caveman who just smelled a bad fart. So the look of this thing is pretty good. Like I said, the build is a little strange, but it winds up okay on the eyes. I just don't know what's so hard about getting an accurate-looking Devastator, though. So many of his competitors are so strange-looking. It's like everyone wants to make their own version of him and not just make him. The accessories he comes with are pretty good. He obviously gets his classic Devagun, which can break down into 2 guns for the smaller figures to use. It fits very securely into his hand, and it makes me wonder why we don't see more connection types like this, because I've never seen a gun that wants to be held as well as this does. Devastator's forearms and hands can come off and turn into rocket pods, another cool addition that makes his parts forming more than just things you have to stick in a drawer when not in use. And his chest crest can come off and turn into a weird cannon and a pair of giant anime death swords that would be at home in Monster Hunter. So yeah, that's a really nice factor in this figure's design. Nothing is fully wasted. Yes, the parts forming is still a problem because if you lose any of this stuff, he can never be fully complete as a combiner again. But all too often, stuff like this is just crap you have to set off to the side and find somewhere to keep it if you aren't using it at the time. So this all breaking down into gear for the smaller figures at least gives it something more to do. Posability on this guy is actually really pretty good for a combiner. Head only has rotation, but you can cheat it for some up and down. Shoulders pull a strong 90 that really wants to hold probably better than any combiner I've ever handled. 90 elbows, but you have to be careful where you grab the arms when using them, because you will pop them off if you do it wrong. I'm happy to inform you that Long Haul infected the combine mode with sideways elbow action, wrist swiv, and opening fingers, the most comically short thighs of all time where you can bend them here or here, but they really get you the exact same amount of length forward. If you use the upper one, you get slightly impeded going forward. If you use the lower one, it's not impeded at all, and if you use both together, this guy is kicking over his head. Legs are unimpeded out to the side, but they can barely go back at all before hitting the backpack. Normal 90 knees with some tight ankle tilt, and again, this all holds very well. So posability on this is actually really strong for a combiner, both in that there's a good amount of it, and it holds better than almost any figure I've ever run across. I assume the original is worse at that because it's heavier. God, if only this thing didn't break in that one place. Still, it's better than the Toy World when this only broke one time after about a year of owning it, whereas the Toy World broke like 3 times in the first hour. But honestly, this is a pretty awesome set. Though, I suppose for the price you pretty much can't go wrong. $40 and you get basically 6 deluxe scale figures. This could poison my dog and I'd be like, I mean, still a good price though. And honestly, I think this can only be an improvement over the original to the point where I don't think I'd want this in a larger scale. It looks good for what it is, it doesn't needlessly take up space, all the engineering and sculpting makes sense, it holds poses well. The only downside is that the plastic is incredibly thin in a lot of places, so breakages will be more likely. But honestly, at that price, you could break this, throw it away, buy another one, throw that one away just for fun, and buy a third one, and you still wouldn't have spent as much as you would have if you bought the official larger release. If you want one of these, I kind of recommend it. I mean, $40, you just can't go wrong at that price. Now excuse me while I go make this guy fight the Commander-class Skyfire on my shelves, so my mistaken childhood belief that Skyfire was Titan-sized can live on. And that's not half what I have to say, but it's enough what I have to say. And I know, you know, what everyone else tells you to do at the end of these videos. So, if you liked what you saw here, please do that. And if you'd like to take it a step further, then please, share this video with any friend you think may be interested. I hope you all enjoyed listening to me waste your time.